Chapter 1. The Bargain in the Dust. The saloon smelled of whiskey, gun oil, and sweat. Sawdust crunched under boots as cowhands leaned against the bar. Cards slapped against the scarred table, and the piano man banged out a tune already drowned by laughter and curses. Evelyn Harper stood in the doorway, her gloved hands clenched tight around the last $10 she possessed. The paper felt fragile, like her future. "All right, gents," the auctioneer bellowed, climbing onto a crate near the back wall. "Tonight's curiosity ain't a horse, ain't a saddle, ain't even a gun. Tonight, we're talking about a man." Laughter rippled through the room. Evelyn's stomach twisted as rough hands shoved forward a broad figure from shadows. Shackled at the wrists, his beard tangled and his eyes sharp as a hawk's, Jack Callahan stood like a mountain unmoved. His shirt was torn, chest scarred, his boots dust-caked. A hush fell for just a moment when his gaze swept the crowd, cold, dangerous, and unreadable. $10, the auctioneer grinned. For 6 months' labor out of the wildest mountain man you'll ever see. Savage, some call him. Mean as a grizzly, dumb as a mule. More laughter. A cowhand spat tobacco juice on the floor. Ain't worth a dime. Evelyn's breath caught. Savage or not, he was strong. Stronger than any ranch hand she could ever hire. Her ranch was crumbling, creditors knocking, and her younger brother sick in bed. If she didn't act now, the land her father built would be gone. "I'll pay." Evelyn's voice rang out, steadier than she felt. Heads whipped around, the room still before bursting with jeers. "The lady's gone mad. She'll be dead by morning." Evelyn ignored them, stepping forward, her skirts brushing against the dusty floorboards. She laid her crumpled bills in the auctioneer's hand. $10. "He's mine." Jack's eyes lifted, pinning her like a rifle sight. No gratitude, no warmth, only a fierce, measuring silence. The auctioneer chuckled, pocketing the money. "Well now, missy, he's yours. Don't say we didn't warn you." The shackles clinked as Jack was unbound. He didn't move until Evelyn stepped closer. For the first time, she noticed the raw power beneath the stillness, like a storm waiting to break. "You'll work for me," she said softly, chin high. Jack tilted his head, his voice low and gravelly from disuse. "You sure about that, ma'am?" Her heart stumbled, but she held his stare. "I don't have the luxury of being unsure." The saloon erupted in laughter again, but Evelyn didn't flinch. The bargain was struck. Outside, the sun bled red over the prairie, dust swirling in the wind. She had bought herself a savage, and with him, perhaps her ruin. Chapter 2. The Savage and the Lady. The prairie stretched wide and empty as Evelyn rode home with Jack Callahan trailing behind her on foot, his stride long and unhurried. The late sun dipped low, painting the horizon in gold and copper. Her ranch sat at the edge of that horizon, fences sagging, shutters hanging crooked, and the once proud barn leaning like an old drunk. Every mile closer made her chest tighten. When they reached the yard, Evelyn dismounted, dust swirling at her boots. Jack stopped and studied the ranch in silence, his shadow long across the dirt. She half expected him to sneer, but he only squinted at the broken corral posts, the chicken coop falling apart, and the limp mule tethered near the well. "It ain't much," Evelyn said sharply, lifting her chin as if daring him to laugh. Jack's eyes flicked to hers, deep, unreadable. "It's land." She swallowed. "It's mine." Without another word, Jack strode past her and ran a hand along the busted corral rail. His fingers, scarred and rough, pressed against a splinter like he was measuring its strength. Evelyn found herself watching, uneasy with the silence that seemed to follow him. Later, in the dim light of the kitchen, she stirred beans over the stove while Jack ate quietly at the table. He didn't wait for invitation, didn't ask questions, just moved like he belonged anywhere survival demanded. His manners were rough, his beard shadow thick. But when her brother coughed in the back room, Jack's eyes darted toward the sound with something close to concern. "You've a sick one," he murmured. Evelyn stiffened. "My brother. Fevers linger for weeks. Doctor's too far, and I can't afford 'em." Jack nodded once and went back to eating, leaving the words to hang heavy between them. That night, Evelyn awoke to the sound of hammering. She hurried outside, the moon hanging bright and silver over the prairie. Jack was at the barn, shirt stripped to his waist, muscles rippling as he swung a hammer. The rotten boards were being replaced with fresh planks he'd scavenged from the shed. Sweat shone on his skin, his movement steady, relentless, as though no hour of night could tire him. "You don't sleep?" she called, arms wrapped around herself against the chill. Jack didn't stop working. Not when there's work to be done. Something in his voice made her shiver, though not from the cold. This was no mindless savage. This was a man carved hard by the mountains, by solitude, by survival. By dawn, the barn stood straighter than it had in years. Evelyn stood at the doorway, her lips parting as she watched him calm her wildest horse with nothing but a steady hand on its muzzle and a quiet, grounding murmur. The horse, untouchable for months, lowered its head. Evelyn's throat tightened. The townsfolk had laughed, called him savage. But as she watched Jack's rough hand gentling the beast, a dangerous thought stirred in her chest. What if they were wrong? Chapter 3, Shadows on the Trail. The woods whispered that morning. Tall pines creaked in the wind, and the smell of damp earth clung to the air after a night of rain. Evelyn rode slowly, her skirts tucked awkwardly against the saddle, a bundle of firewood lashed to her horse. Behind her, Jack strode with his long, steady gait, rifle slung across his back, eyes darting like a predator's. "You don't need to follow me," she called over her shoulder. Jack's voice was low, flat. "Out here, it ain't the men you should fear. It's the beasts." She scoffed, though unease pinched at her chest. "I've managed fine before you came along." His silence was answer enough. The trail narrowed, forcing them deeper between the trees where shadows clung heavy. A raven croaked from above, the sound harsh and unsettling. Evelyn tugged at her reins, urging her mare forward. That's when she heard it, low, guttural, almost like the earth itself was growling. Her horse reared with a terrified shriek. Evelyn clutched the reins, but the bundle of firewood slipped, crashing to the ground. The sound echoed through the trees. From the brush ahead, 2 black bears lumbered into view, their massive frames swaying, noses twitching at the scent of human. Evelyn's heart stuttered. The mare bolted sideways, throwing her hard onto the dirt. Pain shot through her arm as she scrambled backward, skirts tearing, dust clinging to her face. One of the bears rose high on its hind legs, letting out a roar that rattled her bones. Evelyn froze, breath lodged in her throat, until Jack moved. He stepped between her and the beast, knife already drawn from his belt. His stance was coiled, steady, like a man who had stared death down before and didn't flinch at its face. "Go!" he said over his shoulder, gravel in his voice. "Climb that rock." Evelyn's legs refused to work. "Jack!" "Now!" The command snapped through her, and she stumbled toward a jagged outcrop, clutching at stone and branch. Behind her, chaos erupted. Jack lunged as the first bear swiped, the knife flashing silver in a streak of sunlight. He ducked low, driving the blade across thick hide. The beast roared, staggering back, blood dark against his fur. The second bear charged, and Jack turned, meeting it head-on with nothing but steel and a guttural yell that shook the trees. From her perch, Evelyn watched, terror choking her throat. Every strike, every dodge was a blur of muscle and grit. The bears were bigger, stronger, but Jack fought like a storm, primal and unyielding. Finally, after what felt like eternity, the wounded beast retreated into the brush, crashing through trees until only silence remained. Jack stood panting, blood streaking his arm, his chest heaving. Evelyn scrambled down, knees weak, rushing to him. "You!" Her words failed, tears threatening. "You could have died." Jack's eyes, wild and blazing, softened just a fraction as they met hers. "Better me than you." For the first time, Evelyn felt the truth beneath his silence. Savage? No. Protector. A man carved by hardship, yet willing to bleed for her. And her heart, despite the fear still clawing at it, beat faster for him. Chapter 4, Sparks in the Night. The fire crackled low, throwing shadows against the cabin walls. Outside, the prairie wind howled through the gaps in the shutters, rattling them like restless ghosts. Evelyn knelt beside Jack, her hands trembling as she peeled back the blood-soaked cloth he had tied clumsily around his arm. "Hold still," she whispered. Jack grunted, jaw tightening. His face, usually carved in stone, twitched with pain as she dabbed at the long gash carved by the bear's claws. His skin was hot beneath her fingers, his breath ragged, yet he didn't pull away. He simply sat there, broad shoulders hunched forward, letting her tend him. "You're lucky," she said softly, though her voice cracked. "A few inches higher and—" She swallowed the thought. Jack's lips curved in the faintest of smiles. "Ain't the first time I've been clawed at." Evelyn paused, lifting her eyes to his. The flicker of firelight caught the scars scattered across his chest and shoulders. Stories etched in flesh, battles fought and survived. "You talk like a man who's been running from something." He shifted, gaze dropping to the flames. "War. Saw men torn apart in ways worse than bears could manage. Came back different. Folks didn't want me around, so I went where no one cared." His voice roughened, low, heavy. "Mountains don't judge." Evelyn's breath caught. For the first time, his silence, his distance, made sense. He wasn't savage, he was scarred. She threaded the needle with shaking fingers. "This will sting." When the steel pierced the skin, Jack exhaled sharply, his hand gripping the edge of the table until the wood creaked. Evelyn leaned closer, her hair brushing his shoulder as she worked. She felt the heat of him, smelled the earth and pine that clung to him. Her pulse quickened, each stitch pulling her closer to something she didn't dare name. "You didn't have to save me," she whispered, knotting the thread. Jack finally turned to her, eyes like storm clouds breaking. "Didn't think about it. Just couldn't let you be taken." The words settled in her chest like a brand, dangerous and warm. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the fire filled the silence, snapping embers into the dark. Evelyn reached for a fresh cloth, brushed his arm gently. His hand rose, hesitant, uncertain, and caught hers, rough palm against her delicate fingers. Her breath shuddered, but she didn't pull away. The air between them shifted, thick with something unspoken, something wild and fragile. He wasn't just her hired man anymore. He was the one who had stood between her and death, and now sat here letting her stitch him whole. And against the flickering firelight, Evelyn realized her fear of him had been replaced by something far more dangerous: desire. Chapter 5, Gunpowder and Grit. By late afternoon, the sky burned red, the sun bleeding low across the horizon. Evelyn stood on her porch, arms wrapped around herself as the dust cloud rose on the trail. Riders, 3 of them, hard men with wide-brimmed hats pulled low and rifles slung across their saddles. Her stomach dropped. She knew their faces. Briggs and his hired hands, men who'd been circling her land like vultures ever since her father died. "Evening, Miss Harper," Briggs drawled, reining him before the fence. His grin was slick as oil. "Word is you're still behind on your payments. Bank won't wait forever. Might be time you hand this place over to folks who can keep it." Evelyn stiffened. "This ranch is mine. You'll not lay a hand on it." Briggs chuckled. "Sweet thing. Your saying don't matter much. Law'll be here soon, and until then his eyes slid toward her bar and her corral. Could be we help ourselves. Behind her, boots crunched against the porch. Jack stepped forward, rifle already in his grip. His frame filled the doorway, broad and immovable, his expression carved from stone. The last of the sun caught his eyes, and they burned like wildfire. Briggs' laughter faltered. Well, now, you really did bring home the savage, didn't you? Jack didn't answer. He rested the rifle on his shoulder, calm, steady. His silence spoke louder than any words. One of Briggs' men shifted nervously in his saddle. Heard tell he slit a man's throat with nothing but his teeth. Stories. Briggs snapped, though his own smirk wavered. Jack finally spoke, voice low and even. You're trespassing. Turn around. Don't come back. The air crackled. Evelyn's breath caught as Briggs' hand hovered near his pistol. She could hear her heart in her ears, the ticking pause before violence. Then Jack took one step forward off the porch. Just one. Dust swirled at his boots, the rifle never wavering. His gaze was cold enough to freeze blood. Briggs' jaw worked. For a moment it seemed he'd draw, but then, with a sharp tug on the reins, he spat into the dirt. This ain't over. The riders turned, hooves thundering as they vanished back down the trail, leaving only silence and the stench of dust. Evelyn sagged against the porch post, her knees weak. You didn't even fire a shot. Jack lowered the rifle, setting it against the wall. Didn't need to. When she looked at him, really looked, fear wasn't what filled her chest anymore. It was trust, dangerous, overwhelming trust. This man, the so-called savage, had just stood between her and ruin, and the sight of him in the sunset, steady as a fortress, made her heart ache in ways she didn't want to admit. But she couldn't help it. She knew, with every beat of her racing heart, that her life now lay in his hands. Chapter 6, Love Among the Mountains. Dawn bled soft over the prairie, the sky painted in strokes of rose and gold. The land seemed calmer after the storm of the night before, as though even the earth had exhaled with relief. Evelyn stood at the fence line, her shawl pulled tight against the chill, watching the first light spill across her ranch. Broken though it was, it still stood, because Jack had stood for it. Behind her, she heard the slow, steady steps of boots on dirt. Jack approached, his shirt clean but sleeves rolled to the elbow, his arms still bandaged from the bear fight. He carried himself the way he always did, silent, purposeful, like the mountains themselves. You didn't have to stay, Evelyn said, not turning. Her voice trembled, though she tried to steady it. 6 months' work is all I paid for. Nothing more. Jack stopped beside her, leaning his arms against the fence rail. The sunrise caught his profile, hard and rugged, yet softened by weariness. You think I'm counting days? She dared to glance at him. His eyes, gray as storm clouds, met hers, and for a moment she forgot how to breathe. I was a fool, she whispered. I thought I was buying a savage. What I got was a man willing to fight for me, die for me, even when he didn't know me a damn thing. Her hands shook as she clutched the shawl. Jack, I don't want your labor. I want, she faltered, words sticking like burrs in her throat. I want you, for a long beat. Silence stretched between them, heavy with the sound of distant coyotes calling and the softness of the wind. Jack's jaw tightened. His gaze dropped to the dirt, then back to her. Ain't much of a man to offer. Got scars. Got a temper some days. Ain't fit for society. Hell, folks call me savage for a reason. Evelyn reached out, her fingers brushing his rough hand where it rested on the rail. They don't know you. I do. And what I see, her voice cracked, is the man who saved my life. The man who saved this ranch. The man who makes me feel safe in a world that's always trying to take everything from me. Jack's hand turned, catching hers in his palm, rough and warm. Slowly, deliberately, he pulled her closer. You gave me something I thought I'd never have again, he said, his voice husky. Belonging. If you'll have me, Evelyn, I'll stand by you till the day I die. Tears stung her eyes. She rose on her toes. His mouth found hers, rough, hesitant at first, then deep, fierce, sealing the promise between them. The sun crested the hills, flooding the land with light. Evelyn pressed against him, knowing with bone-deep certainty that she hadn't bought a savage for $10. She had found her partner, her protector, her love. And for the first time in years, the ranch felt alive again. Final scene, the savage's promise. The sun dipped low, turning the sky the color of fire and blood as shadows stretched long over the prairie. Evelyn stood at the edge of her porch, the wooden boards warm beneath her boots, watching the horizon where dust still lingered from Briggs and his men's retreat. For the first time in years, the land was quiet, safe. Behind her, the screen door creaked. Jack stepped out, hat in hand, his broad frame limned by the glow of dusk. His bandaged arm rested easy at his side, and his eyes, storm-gray and steady, found hers. They're gone for good, he said. This place is yours now. Evelyn turned, her heart aching with gratitude, with something deeper she could no longer deny. The scent of sagebrush rode the evening breeze, mingling with the faint strains of saloon piano drifting from town. It all felt like the world itself was holding its breath. She stepped closer, slipping her hand into his. Not just mine, she whispered. Ours. Jack's throat worked, as though words came hard. But then his voice, rough and certain, cut through the wind. Where you are, Evelyn, that's home. Her chest swelled. She rose into him, and their lips met. No fear, no bargain, no chains of debt. Only love, fierce and unyielding as the mountains themselves. As the last rays of sun kissed the land, Evelyn knew the circle was complete. She hadn't bought a savage for $10. She'd found a man who'd stand with her against the whole Wild West.